During their time at Fox Cubs, your child will follow what is called the Early Years Foundation stage to guide all their learning. Now, unlike the national curriculum, the Early Years Foundation stage is actually statutory. It's one of the only statutory parts of learning that your child will ever do, and it covers from 0 to all the way up to 5. So when your child moves into reception class next year, they will also still be following the EYFS. It's one of the parts of education that most people you talk to really enjoy working with, because it feels like one of the bits that the government and their advisors really got just right. And the main thing we all really like about it is that it really does consider the whole child, which is very much a Bisley way of working. So when you start to look at the Early Years Foundation stage, they have what are called the prime areas of learning. And it's almost a bit like a pyramid. And at the bottom, the prime areas of learning are the parts of learning that they think must be in place before you can even think about carrying on to more specific learning, such as letters and numbers. So in nursery, our big job is to really get those prime areas of learning just right. They are the real foundations of your child's learning throughout the rest of their schooling. So the first prime area that we really focus on is personal, social and emotional development. So that's all about making relationships with adults and other friends and other peers. That's about learning to deal with conflict, learning to compromise, learning to manage your feelings, and learning to have an understanding of who you are. It's a really important part of the curriculum that we cover in nursery. The next prime area is communication and language, and actually more so than ever we're finding that communication and language is pretty much the key to all successful learning. The more research that's going on about it at the moment, the more we're finding that having strong speech and having that ability to have a conversation, to understand what someone's saying to you, and then to be able to respond is one of the biggest predictors of being successful later in school. It really helps to get children off to a great start in reading if their speech and language is just right. So actually talking to your child and sharing that art of conversation and an interest in new words, all those sorts of things, and just wondering with a child rather than questioning them, but just thinking aloud to them, oh, I wonder why that's happened, and I wonder what would happen if I tried doing it this way. I'm going to have a go at that. Is such a good way to get your child thinking and to get their language to start developing. So the last prime area at this bottom of this really important pyramid is physical development. So in physical development, we're thinking about gross motor skills like running, skipping and hopping and jumping. Also fine motor skills, so being able to thread beads, being able to use plasticine and Play-Doh to make models. And that's a really important pre-writing skill, because if you're doing things like that with your hands, you're strengthening all those muscles and you're building that coordination and that muscle memory that you need to go on to be able to write. There's absolutely no rush to be writing, and we don't expect children even to come to reception, let alone nursery, being able to write. But all those pre-writing skills and those fine motor skills are a really important part of physical development. The other part of physical development is thinking about independence with their self-care. So whether or not they are toilet training, which will obviously depend on their age and stage, whether or not they are able to put their coat and their shoes on and off, whether or not they're able to understand some of the basics of healthy eating, that it's important to stay hydrated, to drink water, not to eat lots and lots of sugar, all those kinds of basic things. So they are our prime areas of learning. Our specific areas of learning go on top of that, and that's when we start to think about things like phonics, reading, so starting to think about the sounds in language, numbers, shapes, creative development, starting to think about using different colours, using different textures, and we also think about the world, so starting to learn about what different people do, learning about different animals, different plants, all those sorts of things. We also look at technology. So there are specific areas, but without the prime areas in place, none of those things fall into place so nicely.